you're watching Gearz, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day.
With the popularity of classic cars and trucks rising all the time, it's not surprising that some people want to be able to enjoy a classic vehicle every day. And the aftermarket has got all kinds of engine and suspension options that will allow you to build a cool cruiser or a drag racer or even an autocrosser. But one modification that virtually everybody agrees that they need is air conditioning, especially in the South. The problem is most cars and trucks prior to 1970 did not come with factory air. And if they did, it was usually a big bulky unit that hung under the dash and didn't work very well. So people pulled them out, rolled the windows down, and drove faster, which just resulted in a lot of sweaty speeding tickets. Fortunately, you don't have to do it that way anymore. Because now it's possible to put in-dash air conditioning into a classic vehicle that looks factory and cools like a modern car. And we're going to show you what's involved in doing that with this 68 Chevy pickup that's just been painted. It's ready to start going back together. Now, one thing that you need to know about adding air conditioning to a vehicle. This isn't something that you're going to do in just a couple of hours. No, it's going to take some time because there's a lot going on here. There's wiring, there's plumbing, there's taking old parts off, there's putting new parts on, a lot of stuff. But it is something that you can do in your garage if you take your time. Now, the kit that we're going to use comes from LMC Truck, and it's everything you're going to need to put air conditioning on a 67 through 72 Chevy truck. Take a look at this. Now, it comes with a new air conditioning and heat unit. You got all the hoses, you got the wiring harnesses, you got the condenser, you got the compressor, you got twin electric fans. You even have a smaller insert for the glove box so you don't lose all your glove box space. All right, those are the parts. Now let's take a look where we're going to put this stuff. Now, obviously, the best time to add air conditioning to a vehicle is when it's all stripped out like this. But that doesn't mean you can't add it to a running, driving vehicle. But you will want to take out the seat, the glove box, some of the dash, so you can get to the old heater unit and pull all of that out. The hoses, the wiring, the ductwork, everything that goes with it. Now, once the old unit is out of the way, you have got a decision to make. Because since the truck did not have factory air, there are no vents in the dash for the air to blow through. Fortunately, there are options available that have these vents that mount under the dash and vents like this that mount up in the dash. You just have to drill a hole and put them in. Now, if your dash is destroyed, just butcher it up, you can go to LMC Truck and get one of these brand new metal replacement dashes. You can see it is set up for factory air. You got the vents on the sides and in the center, and this is a really great piece. But you've got to understand, this is not a bolt-in unit. If you look up here, you'll see about 36 spot welds going right down this pinch weld for the windshield. All of those need to be drilled out, and the new dash needs to be put in, and it needs to be welded up. So if you're going to replace your dash, your project just got a lot more involved. Fortunately, as you can see, ours is perfect. So we're not going to replace the dash, we're just going to put some vents in it. Now, one of the biggest issues that you're going to face anytime you're trying to put air conditioning on an older vehicle is what are you going to do about these holes in the firewall that the original heater covered? Now, in the past, you needed to make some sort of a panel to cover that, and then you tried to figure out how to mount the air conditioning unit inside. Well, this kit bypasses all of that because it comes with these panels that not only cover the holes, but they also serve as mounting brackets for the air conditioning unit. And all we have to do is punch out these original holes a little bit so we can get these in place. All right, now we're ready for the air conditioning unit, and this is where you're really going to appreciate just how small this thing is because there's not a lot of room up under here. Now first we're going to mock it into place so we can decide where we're going to locate our drain for the condensation. Once that's decided, cut the hole, install the grommet, and you're ready to bolt it all together. Hey, welcome back to Gearz, where we are showing the best way to make a 67 through 72 Chevy truck even cooler by adding modern compact air conditioning, where there was once a big, bulky, ugly heater on the Firewall. Now, as you can see, we've got the new unit in place, Firewall's all cleaned up and looking good. Now we're ready to deal with the vents, which means you need to cut your beloved cab. It's not as bad as you think. It'll only hurt for a second. Come on. All right, the vents that we're going to use, as you can see, come from LMC Truck, and they're the original style on both the sides and in the center of the dash. Now, the good news is LMC also supplies cutting templates so you can get your holes exactly where you need them. Now, if your truck is painted, before you cut into your nicely painted dash, you probably want to put on some masking tape, and here's why.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs. Born to burn.
When you're working on a project, it's a fact that sooner or later you will have to cut into a nicely painted panel. And saws are notorious for chipping, cracking, and destroying paint. Well, a simple solution is to cover the work area with masking tape before you mark your holes. What this will do is protect the surrounding paint if you happen to hit it with the tool, and it will also keep the paint from chipping or cracking when you're making the cut. This is a simple trick, but it will quickly become one of your favorites because you will use it all the time. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. All right, once the tape is in place, we'll just transfer the cuts from the templates, then pull out the tools and start cutting. Now, the more time you spend here truing up the cuts, the better the vents are going to fit. The goal is to make them look factory. Once the holes are cut and cleaned up, we'll install the vents. Then run the supplied ducting hose from the heat and air conditioning unit to the vents. The last thing we're going to put in the cab at this point is also the easiest, the electronic controller and the wiring harness. Now, the controller just bolts in the stock location and the wiring harness just plugs in. Okay, the next step of the installation takes place on this side of the Firewall because we need to get some accessories on that engine to power the air conditioning unit. Now, with a Chevy project, most people's first choice is a small block or big block Chevy engine for obvious reasons. They're great engines. And LMC has got an accessory system that consists of a couple of brackets, some hardware, and some pulleys that will allow you to mount an air conditioning compressor and an alternator up here on front, high, to get them out of the way so you got room on the sides and make them easy to work on when you're under the hood. But as cool as all of this is, the LS engine is rapidly becoming the engine to put in because they're easy to find, they're light, and they build a ton of power. But instead of using the stock accessories, which can tend to be a little cumbersome, we're going to put on a serpentine system from LMC Truck. Take a look. What you're looking at is a complete accessory system for the LS engine, and it's designed to not only be compact and look good, but also to utilize some of the best products in the aftermarket. For example, you have new polished aluminum brackets, you got a new water pump, got a power steering pump and a remote reservoir, a little tiny air conditioning compressor, which is what started this whole conversion, and of course an alternator and pulleys and all kinds of stainless hardware to put it together. This is how it goes on. First up is the new damper and the polished crankshaft pulley that bolts in place of the original one-piece unit. We'll follow that with the water pump and the aluminum mounting brackets. Now, once those are in place, we're ready to bolt on the air conditioning compressor, the alternator, and the power steering pump. And finally, add the polished pulleys, the tensioner, and the belt. All right, with the accessories in place, we are coming down the home stretch of installing air conditioning, and all the hard stuff is done. Unfortunately, I can't show you the next step because there's no front on the truck, but they're very simple, so we're going to walk you through it. All you have to do is install your fans on the inside of the radiator, the condenser on the outside, hook up your hoses, make a few hookups, and you're ready to start enjoying air conditioning. Unless you're involved in a ground-up restoration like this, in which case it will take you longer. But believe me, it's going to be worth it when it's all finished and you turn the key and hit that button for cold air. Yeah!
And now, Boost Tech, brought to you by Supercharger, the ultimate power adder.
You know, if you want to get some serious power out of a modern vehicle, slapping on a supercharger or a turbo is one of the best ways to do that. But only if you understand the system and set it up right. And some of the biggest questions that we get about running a supercharger or a turbo is what's the difference and which one's the best? And the best way to answer those is to start at the beginning. Now, superchargers come in a couple of configurations, the first being the classic root-style supercharger that has rotors or screws inside of a case here. The other is the centrifugal-style supercharger. Now, most turbos have this kind of configuration, and if you'll notice, it's very similar to the centrifugal-style supercharger. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Now, all three of these create boost by compressing air with the goal of putting more oxygen into your engine to ultimately give you more power. But the way they do that is what's different. Let's take a look. The root-style supercharger is the classic blower that you see sticking through hoods and running down drag strips because it bolts right to the top of the engine and looks awesome. A large belt connects it to the crankshaft, which turns the rotors inside to create boost. The drawbacks to a root-style blower are heat because of its location on the engine, size, they're tall, you may need to cut a hole in the hood, and accessories. If you're running the 3-inch wide Gilmer belt, a lot of times all you get is an alternator. No power steering, no air conditioning. A centrifugal supercharger takes a little different approach in that it uses a belt from the crankshaft to turn an impeller that pulls in fresh air, compresses it, and blows it out to the engine. Now, because of its extreme tolerances in machining, it's more efficient than the root-style blower, it runs cooler, and it can easily be set up to work with all of your accessories. A turbocharger works exactly like the centrifugal supercharger in the way that it utilizes an impeller to compress air and send it to the engine. What is different is the way it's spun. A turbo uses exhaust gas instead of a pulley to turn the impeller and build boost. So let's take a look at the pros and cons of each one. Since a supercharger is turned by a pulley off of the crankshaft, there is going to be some parasitic power loss to do that. And of the two, the worst violator is the root-style supercharger. On the other hand, a turbo doesn't have parasitic loss, but it's not just a bunch of free unlimited power either. Since it uses exhaust gases to turn the turbine, that's going to create some back pressure. And that can affect the airflow out of your engine, and you know how important airflow is to building power. But even with these small little things, the power that you're going to pick up by putting any of these on is going to be well worth it. The big question is, what fits your application the best? For a basic hot rod running a Ford or Chevy engine with carburetors, it's hard to beat a root-style blower for simple, easy power and good looks. But if you're running a different engine, or space and accessories are at a premium, well, this may not be the system for you. For a late model fuel-injected vehicle, a centrifugal supercharger will give you great power increases and drivability and are available in complete kits to fit most cars and trucks. However, this makes them more expensive, but a whole lot easier to put in. A turbo will also supply great power increases, but drivability is a little more tricky because they can lag at lower RPMs and generally they don't come as a complete kit. So that's going to require some fabrication of brackets and exhaust to get it all plumbed in and working right. So you've got three different approaches, all delivering the same goal: more boost. Choose wisely, my friends.
And now, Parts Bin, brought to you by Air Raid, American-made quality and performance since 1992.
Everybody knows that the new Chevy Camaro is a great performance car, and right off the showroom floor, they're a pretty hot ride. But they can be better. They can always be better. And a step in the right direction is to bolt on a set of Hooker Blackheart headers. Now, for you street guys, they have this shorty header that's designed to bolt right in place of your stock manifold and increase flow. For you all-out performance guys, they have these long tube headers that are really going to allow your engine to howl. Now, both headers are completely built with stainless steel. They feature thick 3/8-inch flanges, so they're not going to warp on you, and heavy-duty construction, so they're going to last a long time. The best part is, though, they're designed to bolt right in place, so no banging on them with a hammer to make them fit. That's pretty amazing when you consider the difference of styles you got going on here. So, when you're getting serious about getting headers for your Camaro, buy a Hooker Blackheart set of headers. You know what I meant. Since we are on the subject of headers, we need to talk about the most frustrating thing about them, leaks. Yeah, and it's not just high temperatures, it's also the high pressures that are built up with turbochargers and superchargers and nitrous and that kind of thing. Fortunately, Mr. Gasket has a solution with these MLS exhaust gaskets. Check these out. As you can see, there are 3 layers of stainless steel with the center and the outer layer having this special embossing around the port. Now what this does when you bolt the header on, this acts like a spring and creates force, and that gives you a leak-proof seal. The best part is you can use these over and over and over again. Now bolts are also important because if those get loose, no fancy gasket's going to make any difference. So Mr. Gasket has these locking header bolts. As you can see, they already have Loctite on them. Then they have a special serration around the head that locks down on the header and keeps it from vibrating loose. So if you're putting on a set of headers, you need to seal them up and keep it from leaking. And Mr. Gasket is the best way to do that. There is no doubt that GM has built some great engines over the years. And when the LS7 was released, people went crazy over it and started modifying them and dropping them into projects. However, there was one limitation to the LS7, the stock intake manifold. There was no upgrade for it. Well, that has changed because MSD has come out with the Atomic Air Force intake manifold for the stock or modified LS7. Now, take a look at this. This is a 2-piece polymer design, which allows you to get right in there if you want to port those runners. It also has a larger throttle body bore, so you can fit MSD's big 103mm throttle body, which also has the mechanical throttle, so you don't have to mess with drive-by-wire if you don't want to. Now, this may not look like much, but when MSD dynoed this, it picked up 36 extra horsepower and 16 foot-pounds, all in a bolt-on intake manifold. They don't call it the Air Force for nothing, and MSD is the only place to get that.
And now, what are you working on? Brought to you by Painless Performance Products. American made, American proud.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Brian and Tara John from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And this is a cool project because it's a husband and wife project. But to properly tell this story, we got to go back to the early 80s when Tara's dad was drag racing a really nasty 57 Chevy. Take a look at this. Now, he drag raced it for about 20 years, and then the car was parked in a garage where they said it sat untouched till about '07, where unfortunately her father passed away with cancer. And that's when Brian and Tara decided they were going to do something with the car, but they weren't going to restore it. No, they decided they wanted to keep it just like it was, but just make it street legal. So, take a look. The 468 big block Chevy with massive 714 cam still rumbles the fenders. And the 514 gears and the spool in the rear were swapped for 411s and a limited slip, and the 5500 stall converter was downgraded to 3200. The cooling system was also upgraded with a new radiator and water pump, and they also added an alternator and upgraded the electrical. The original paint and interior were so cool and in such good shape that it was just cleaned up and detailed so it looks just like it did back in the day. And of course, the 5-gallon fuel cell was swapped for a 15-gallon tank, so Brian and Tara can actually go someplace other than the closest quick stop. So to recognize such a cool car and such a cool couple, we hooked up with our buddies at Painless Performance. We're going to give you a $500 gift card so you can go to their catalog, pick out some stuff, and put it on Painless's bill. Also, we're going to hook you up with one of our project planning books so you can keep track of what you did with that project or some other project. We're also going to give you one of our Sergeant Rock packages, which is the shirt, the die cast, and the guitar pick. And finally, we're going to give you an O'Reilly gift card so you can offset some of the cost of the project. Now, the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this, get your vehicle featured on the show, you got to go to our website, go to Gearz Nation, and submit your project. We pull all of our features right off of Gearz Nation. Also, don't forget to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that social media, because we've always got something cool going on there too. All right. That takes care of it for us today. I know that you want my vintage oil cans that are full of oil, but you can't have them. You need to go out and find your own. We'll see you next time.